Hello, and welcome back to a very special episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. It's very possible, likely even, that the man himself, the GOAT, Tom Brady, is retiring after 22 seasons of incredible, life-changing, the game-altering, historic football. And we have our host, Mr. Logan Landers, here to talk about Tom Brady retiring and some potential news that might interrupt the flow of that for just a second as we continue down the line with Tom Brady and his retirement. So, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening to us on the podcast. Mr. Logan Landers, what is going on? How are you, and what is up with Tom Brady?
Hey, what's going on, Jeremiah? Happy to see you, of course, filming some live videos. But man, this was crazy, right? Did
Yeah.
anyone see this coming? Right? It happened on Saturday, and man, it just kind of came out of nowhere, right? We all got reports on ESPN, on Twitter, wherever, mind you, that from very very trusted reporters in the NFL, right? Adam Schefter and all those guys with the blue check marks that you see all the time on
Yeah.
television, looking good, saying that Tom Brady's retired. And then a couple of hours later, like an hour or two later, you see that there's reports coming out that Tom Brady's father, the general manager for the Buccaneers, his agent, they're all saying that Tom hasn't officially said anything yet. So it's a battle of kind of he says, he said, right? Of how did the media get this information? Is it really going to happen? Is it truly happening? And is Tom actually gonna retire, or is he gonna come back for another season? Now, if I had to assume, right, it said that Schefter and all those guys they've talked with Brady's friends and family, all the ones closest to him, and said that it's looking like it is very possible that Tom is going to retire. It's just that he doesn't want to announce it yet. He probably wants to make a big deal out of it, and I don't blame him. And I mean, for a guy being in the league for 20 plus years is incredible enough, let alone being the best football player of all time. And I'll get to the accolades in a second.
Mhm.
But I was mentioning to Jeremiah offline before we got on that Tom Brady currently has a show going on about his life right now, right? About his football life. And there is one final episode that's yet to be either filmed or announced or just released yet. And my speculation is that they're filming stuff right now for his quote unquote retirement episode, right? Go get some big numbers on that final episode, and he can announce his retirement in probably the best way he can on a grand stage. So that's what I think is going to happen whenever it comes out of his mouth for Tom Brady. That's what I think. So we'll see what happens. But if we did see the final snap of his career the other week in the divisional round, what a great career, right? A guy who
Definitely.
no one thought would be, a late round draft pick out of Michigan. We've all seen the scrawny Tom Brady back in '99 or whatever, just looking miserable. And then a guy who got lucky with the Patriots. There was an injury that came afoot. He got a chance to play, and he played for 22 long seasons and was pretty much healthy for all of those, except for maybe one or two. But man, a guy who has accolades that can go on for a whole other video itself. But just a few highlights here: a 7-time Super Bowl champion,
Mhm.
5-time Super Bowl MVP, a 3-time regular season MVP, first all time in passing yards, first all time in passing touchdowns, first all time in wins, and a 15-time Pro Bowl selection, which that's insane. I know one stat I saw during the divisional round was Tom Brady himself has more wins in the playoff than a lot of teams. I don't know how many it was, but it's entire organizations who have been around for 50 plus years. Meanwhile, Tom Brady in 22 years has already beat their team records. So what a great season, right? If this is finally it, right? His final stat line throughout first off, his 2021 season was phenomenal. Uh, he set a lot of high records for even himself. He threw for 5,316 passing yards, right? That's probably top 5 all time for yards for him. 43 touchdowns, not too bad either. 12 interceptions, right around where he's always been. And just a guy who's been consistent year in and year out. And even at age 44, right? He said he wanted to play to 45. So if he wants to cut it short 1 year, we're not going to get on him, right? Because throughout his entire career, he had a total of, well, his completion percentage was 64%. That's solid. He had a total of 84,520 yards, 624 touchdowns, and just a ton more accolades you can talk about, right? Played with a bunch of great teammates, right? Gronk, Edelman, all those guys. And just the way that his career's been shaped, it's been going on from year in and year out. That he might still win the MVP, right? He is going to be an MVP conversation, if he even retires, right? And if we saw his final game a couple weeks ago, then he went out with a loss in the divisional round, but he can say that he's done it, right? He's gotten championships in the AFC and the NFC. He did it with the Patriots for the majority of his career, of course. Went over to the Buccaneers somewhat recently, got a Super Bowl over there. And that just kind of proved to himself, I think, that he can do it without Bill Belichick. And that silenced a lot of people, right? That said that he was a system quarterback. It wasn't for Bill, he wouldn't be able to do nothing. Well, he did a great job. He got Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. He got into the divisional round this year, had a lot of injuries, of course. They probably could have went further, wasn't for that. But overall, a tremendous career. Like I said, we could go on and on about this for 30, 45, 50 minutes if we wanted to. But this is truly it, right? If we've seen him play the final snap of football, it has been an absolute joy and pleasure watching him. Of course, we all know what he did with the Falcons a couple of seasons ago. We're not going to get into that, though. But just one of the most consistent, one of the most just talented guys we've ever seen in football, let alone at the quarterback position. And it has been an absolute pleasure watching him pretty much throughout my entire life, honestly. And what a great quarterback. Hopefully he can enjoy retirement now with his kids, with his wife, and just ride off into the sunset, right? Who knows? He might go into some announcing. He might go into the front office. You never know. I don't think we've seen the last of Tom Brady in terms of off the field football in the managerial aspect of some sort. So we'll see with that. He's got his TB12 brand, right? He's nutritionist, so
Right.
he's got a lot of different alleys to go through. But if this is it, man, it's been a joy to watch him play. I don't think we're going to see anyone like him ever again.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely right. And here's the good question too: if this is this really it? Because if you go to Twitter
Yeah.
and you ask the Twitter the Twitter peoples as they go,
Mm-hmm.
there is some controversy as to whether or not he actually is
Yeah.
retiring. You got some funny jokes coming right off the top. Tom Brady coming out of retirement at 50 to beat multiple Super Bowl champion Archie Manning, and let's see. There's a couple of other ones I thought were really funny here. Let's see. Tom Brady's retirement, 129 to 129. Like, you've got a lot of people that just aren't quite sure if he's really
Right.
retiring. I'll tell you this, though. There's one thing that you definitely do see and that you definitely recognize. First off, it's the respect for what he has
Oh, yeah.
done, the comparisons to some of the other greats out there, but also the people who are the naysayers. I think the main reason they either want him to retire or don't want him to retire are twofold. They want him to
Mm-hmm.
retire so that other people can shine. On the other hand, they don't want him to retire because they want to beat him. They want to
Yeah.
beat him. They
Pretty
want
much.
a chance to beat him. They want to see what exactly it means to be able to beat Tom Brady on the field. And can you imagine being a hotshot quarterback, maybe like a Trevor Lawrence or somebody who hasn't got to
Mm-hmm.
really play against someone like Tom Brady
Yeah.
very often, in these storied careers? He wants his chance before. He doesn't want to just transition and be the next, quarterback out there.
Right.
He wants to actually face the greats. And so, yeah, I totally get that whole idea of whether he is or isn't retiring and what's really happening with it and the controversy there. The one thing that
Mm-hmm.
it's not controversial and that we know for sure is that Tom Brady has put in 22 seasons of incredible football, relatively controversy free for the most part. And yeah, and just an absolute player of the game, a guy who we will be talking about for the rest of our lives when it comes to football. And one thing that I'm really excited about, and this is the last point that I'll make for this particular video, is I cannot wait till about 3 or 4 years from now, maybe 5 years, we get Vincent Turner, our original host, to come in, do a huge breakdown of the entire
Hmm.
career of Tom Brady from high school all the way through college, all the way into the NFL, and just go all the way through his entire career. And I love to listen to our host, who is just like an encyclopedia of football knowledge, just break down all of the events and the happenings that lead up to a point like this. So that's my most exciting thing for these is, as Tom Brady does retire, we get to really come back and do some amazing retrospectives on these players and on all the games that he played that will become more and more iconic as we go along. So, yeah, everybody who's watching or listening to us on our podcast, thank you so much. And if you aren't listening to our podcast, come and join us on our podcast, 100 Yards of Football. We broadcast every single week. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcast, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can join us. Just like for our 50-yard line football, we are brought to you by the Believe Podcast Network, who helps us get our podcast through every day and all through the weeks. And of course, all the hard work behind the scenes from our host, Mr. Logan Landers, who prepares and gets all of these amazing episodes up and running for us every single week. So shout out to Tom Brady on your potential, most likely retirement, and shout out to our host, Mr. Logan Landers, for bringing you this great retrospective as we settle with the news that the great himself, Tom Brady, is leaving the NFL so that he can go and do some fishing, perhaps, or maybe sit and watch some TV. Who knows exactly what he'll do? I wonder if he's the type who can sit around and really relax, or if he's the type who always has to stay busy. So
We'll see. We will see in the near future.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for watching this live episode. I am your producer, Jeremiah Long, and we'll be right back with another